Hi, this is Dr. Dan Ratner. Today I am here with Daniel for his fourth session, all about action steps, so we can see what he's going to do about the three columns, what ways of thinking and what things he's going to do that are going to make it easier for him to ease his symptoms. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and I'll get back to you personally. Daniel, I want to welcome you back. As you've seen from so many people in our community, there's been an outpouring of admiration for you for being willing to do this and being vulnerable. And a lot of people are also saying that they're seeing some shifts in you. So that's something we're going to talk about today a little bit. And there's no pressure to say one way or another how things are. I want to know how they really are for you. But I wanted to orient you to this fourth session and what usually goes in the consultation. And I want to remind everybody out there that these consultations are designed to get you your general mind-body map and a sense of what each column does. But in addition to what each column does, you also need to know a little bit about what to do about them. So that's what today is about. And so, Daniel, the first thing that I want to do is just review the columns that we've been over so far. We've been through the three columns, just to orient you again to where we're at with it. So, first of all, in the emotions column, remember we developed those themes, and those are kind of the general, like I call it, like looking in different buckets when you're trying to figure out what's going on with an onset or an uptake in a symptom. We'll get a little more into the details of action steps for that, but that's the general gist. In the doubt column, we started listing those doubts at the three different levels and the four different kinds of doubt. And we started to get some of those answered, and part of the action step is going to be to continue to get those answered until you have your doubt is way down. And thirdly, the power column, we talked about that core narrative, kind of who you are at base and what you need and what happened to you, and a little bit about what you're going to do about it, and then power in relation to yourself, others, and your symptoms. So you've got a lot of information, and it's a lot to integrate. But at the same time, the system is designed to keep simplifying it down and down and down, because each column is defined in a certain way and has certain notes that we've taken and certain implications. So now I was going to talk about what to do with the action steps. I just want to check in with you now, though, Daniel, and find out how are you feeling about the process at this part before we dive into that. And I'm not asking that to say, oh, you need to rave about it. I want to know actually what's going on for you.
I definitely have seen a little shift. I feel like there's intermittent times where I feel like I know where to go with my thinking and can find some relief, decrease in my symptoms. And then there's some other times where I still have a little bit of confusion, but it seems like I'm heading in the right direction and able to. I think the power thing is, as I've said before in prior videos, is really kind of struck a chord with me. So I can, I think it's definitely been meaningful and helpful more moving forward. It's been great.
I mean, we even found something today. You don't have to say much about it. You can say things about it or not. But we found something today where you weren't sure which way to go with something, and I asked you, what would be the powerful way? If you want to talk about it, please do. But if not, that's totally okay. But it did seem striking that you were able to make a powerful choice.
Yeah, that's definitely things that I've seen in myself is, especially with my children, my families, right before the video, there's some teenage drama in my house and trying to decide if we're just going to do this video or not knowing what may happen, but at any moment. But as we talked about it, I decided like it will be there when I get done with this, and if something happens in the middle, we can do something about it if it happens. But hey, I can handle it. So
right. So that was the powerful choice. We thought about, well, if we rescheduled, would that be the powerful choice?
Right.
But you felt it was the powerful choice to go ahead and go forward. So you're already seeing some big changes in that, and I did have the sense that the power column is going to be the most, the most powerful. That's funny.
Yeah.
But it is going to be the one that operates the most strongly for you. Every time I do these consultations, I'm looking at which column is the one that's going to really get somebody through to where they need to be, the way they want to live. And usually my assumption going in is often that doubt is going to be the column. And I do think doubt needs to go down for you to get fully better, but I think that power is going to actually be driving the engine. And
Absolutely.
I could feel that last time.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start to talk about action steps. First of all, one thing I want to say is in these consultations, the idea is not that at the end of the 4th consultation, you're cured, everything's fine, you never need to talk to me again. Now, some people do get really very significant relief by the end of the 4th session, and they don't need to talk to me that much, but most of them do check in with me later and say, oh, I had a little flare up here, or I had a question about this. And so one thing you need to know is I don't disappear from here. You know, I consider it part of the consultation that we'll troubleshoot down the road. We might have to have a tune-up session down the road at some point. The idea of the consultation is to get you the whole idea of the whole system and start developing your system. I did a video on this podcast. I don't know if you got to see it, Daniel, but it was about the fact that everybody needs to construct their own version of my system. You know, it's like my system is the scaffold and the framework, but you develop your things, and you are already beginning to do that. When you were, managing some of those symptoms, you were getting some of your answers, and you're headed in the right direction, as you say. So today is going to be about talking about action steps and how to get you headed even more in the right direction. And one of the things that I say about action steps is that action steps are more actions of thinking than they are something you're going to physically go do. Now, there are some that are physically go do things, like resuming normal physical activity is a doubt-related action step. Each action step fits with one of the columns, or sometimes all of them. Mm-hmm. So earlier in the day, I sent you this PDF I have of action steps, which, some people are purchasing and using on their own. But when I do a consultation like this, when it comes to action steps, I'm leaning a little more heavily on that sometimes, because what it can do for us is give us some guideposts about what to do. And what we want to do is go through this document and start maybe you have it on the computer, so you could like bold it or jot it down if you're like, that one is really important.
Yeah. Because
what you're going to find is that some of these apply to you much more than others. So what I want to do is get down the basic principles of how you're going to use these columns and some of the key, maybe just a couple at least, of the key action steps, and then you can go through this on your own. So I'm going to pull that up right now so that we can both be looking at that. Do you have it on your screen?
Yes, sir. I do.
Okay. Now let's see if I can find where I put it. I don't know that I can. Okay, here it is. So the idea that I want to look at first is, what is the emotions column really all about? The emotions column, as we've talked about, it relates to the onset and uptick in symptoms. But here are some of the basic tenets you're going to use when you're thinking through your columns. Because what I do, if I have a symptom, I literally go through the columns. I first go to the emotions column, I then go to the doubt column, and then I then go to the power column. And if I find something, it can sometimes alleviate the symptom, that particular column. If it doesn't, I usually move on to the next. And if I get through all three and it still hasn't worked, I go back because I missed something.
Yeah.
So starting with the emotions column, the first thing I think is, was this an onset or an uptick in a symptom? Or am I actually struggling with something that's been there the whole time? That's delineating between the emotions and the doubt column. And please do tell me if there's a way in which you're not following what I'm saying or you need more information. If I think that, no, this was an uptick in a symptom or an onset, then I'm going to start looking at the timing. That's the first rule of thumb. And a lot of this you already know. It's really about organizing it. So I think about the timing. And then I try to match the timing with one of those themes, the themes that we developed. Is this making sense so far?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, if it is an emotions column driven symptom, and you hit on the right thing, the broad theme and the specific, you should see the symptom reduce. If the symptom doesn't reduce, it means either we have the wrong broad theme, we have the wrong specific thing, or we've got the wrong column. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I just want to review that one more time because it's a lot to take in. Either you got the wrong broad theme, and then you can go back to your themes, or you got the wrong specific application of that theme. Maybe it's like, oh, I got in an argument with my uncle, but I also, had a bad interaction with somebody at the school, and you're thinking about the uncle when it's really the school. That's the symptoms are going to tell you if you're onto something. If they start moving around, then you're onto something. So one of the key things in the emotions column and how you're going to use it, an action step kind of tenet, is when we pair an emotional experience with a symptom and the symptom changes, that's extremely convincing. It not only helps with the emotions column, but it also helps with the doubt column. So it sounded like you've had some of that in these last couple of weeks. Is that true? I don't want to put words in your mouth because if not, then no, I don't want to say that.
No, I mean, I've definitely had specific situations which have come about where I've had to go into these ways of thinking as far as, is this emotion, is this doubt, is this power? And I think that sometimes where I struggle is with it is it's almost like, am I supposed to have my columns memorized so when I'm out and about, I could go
Good
right
question.
Go right to these, so I can kind of know exactly which one it might be.
Here are the things that I would know, that I would keep memorized. You do not need to remember those columns exactly. Absolutely not.
Okay.
The way I think about it is it's like computer files. You just need to remember the files, because once you click in them, you'll remember the specifics, but you don't need to remember the specifics offhand. So, as an example, let's say you are thinking about how self-critical you can be. We know that is a part of you. That's the file you need to remember. When you're looking through the kind of buckets, just be like, is it self-criticism? Is it fatherhood? Is it I'm a disappointment to everybody? Just the big themes. Try to just have those in your mind. And that's all you're going to need. Because you know your life. Once you get into the right ballpark, the symptom should either feel right from a cognitive standpoint, like, yeah, this feels like what's going on, or the symptom should start to shift. One of the two, or actually there's three, because there's also just logic. If you're like, listen, that symptom started with that timing, right then when that guy said that. What was it about? Let me think about the broad themes. The specifics you get to last. And you don't need to remember all the specifics. You don't need to remember the way we phrased it. That's maybe for looking back later. But just when you're walking around, know that the timing of the symptom matters. Know that it's about the onset and uptake of symptoms. And know about kind of the types of things that lead to a mind-body experience. And know your themes. That's it.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
It's very
boil
helpful.
It down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think I've had this weekend. I had some situations where I just couldn't quite. I guess I was so worried about the specifics in some ways that I just kind of forgot the bigger picture in some ways.
I'm glad you asked it, and it's a great question, and it highlights something very important here. When it comes to action steps, all you need to remember is the basics. The specifics will fill their way in as you explore it. Just remember the basics, and that's mostly what I want to go over today, is the basics. We'll get into some specifics so you can see how it works. But with respect to the basics, I just gave you kind of the main tenets and the main things you need to remember.
Okay.
It's written down on your mind-body map, so you have it somewhere. If you're like, I can't remember it all, you've got that there. But you don't need to memorize that. And sometimes people try to, it's like and I understand why, but they're trying so hard to be able to do everything just right, and it feels like too much. My system is all about, let's get the broad picture. because that's the overarching strategy that gets you in the right ballpark. And then you're like, okay, now I can move here. Now I can move here. You click open files and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But you can't remember all those files. That's impossible. Okay?
Absolutely. There's no way.
So why don't we do this now? We've talked about the kind of emotional tenets, how to think about that column. Rather than get into specific emotional action steps, I'm going to go to the central tenets of the doubt column. Then I'll do the central tenets of the power column. This is how I usually do it. So let's say you've looked in the emotions column, and it either got you part way or didn't feel like it was working. So then we move on to doubt. The doubt column, as we know, it's got those 4 different types. Do you remember this? I'm happy to review it again, but that's something I would hold on to as a tenet.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble remembering right now, but it may just be that I'm on the spot. So
yes, exactly. You're very much on the spot. So I'm not meaning to have you be, but I totally understand. So first of all, when we talk about doubt just definitionally, it's a lack of certainty.
Right.
And then there's questions, any questions you have, any confusion you have, and any fear.
Okay.
And what we want to do is, well, here's another kind of broad theme, broad tenet. Doubt relates to chronic issues more than anything. If there's a new symptom, it's emotional. Now, it is possible that doubt can lead to a newish symptom,
mm-hmm.
but that symptom would go away a lot faster if there was no doubt. You can start to have doubt, like if you get a trigger, you move in a certain way and it hurts, and then you're like, well, now I think I'm injured. So, but it still takes on a pretty chronic form because now you are already into the mindset that you're injured and it's going to last.
Right.
So it's a different thought process. I mean, it's funny because I'm looking at the central tenets and I'm like, if I had to tell you just what to remember, I might need to edit this because there's certain things that are really great specific information, but they maybe aren't going to help you as much as something just very, very broad. And the broad theme is if you have doubt in any of those ways, those 4 ways, that's fuel for symptoms. And we need to have certainty through science and logic. You have lots of questions that we have not yet answered. So one of our action steps is going to be, now we're going to go through and answer them. We'll do some of them today, and we will probably need to do some through text as we go. Wait, what about this? We just keep bringing the doubt column down, 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 down. The emotions column stays as it is. Your themes are your themes. Mm-hmm. They come and go with emotional patterns. Doubt, though, can be actually eradicated by a full understanding. And this is part of why I need to describe the broad system for everybody. Because it has to make sense fully. If it makes sense partially, that was not good enough for me, and it's not good enough for most people. I don't know who it's good enough for, honestly. I think sometimes people are willing to settle for it, but it's really not good enough. So the idea is you're allowed to have your doubt. You don't want to pretend you don't have doubt. That doesn't do you any good. Let the doubt in, get it defined, and then let's get it answered. Whether it's through reading a book, talking to me, puzzling it out for yourself. You've already gotten some relief. So let's say you have a doubt that this is a mind-body symptom at all. You could go back and be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. How did I get better at all if this were not a mind-body symptom?
And that's exactly this, I keep on going back to this weekend, but it was amazing how, there was maybe an hour or 2 where I'm sitting there going, I don't have any symptoms right now. And so it makes no sense at all that, I've had all these symptoms for all this, the last 4 or 5 years. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of relaxed, I'm calm, and there's nothing in my body at all. Of course I do have the problem of paying attention to my body too much. So, but it wasn't it's just, it's kind of further confirmation of I think where we're going with the process, that it is possible.
Right. You couldn't possibly be in that situation where it's better some of the time if it weren't a mind-body issue. So it's about building confidence over time. And every experience you get, every symptom you master, every question you answer, every fear that you allay, it all brings the doubt down. So that's the basic tenet. There are things to watch for, like triggers or the symptom imperative where it'll dance to another symptom. By the way, if you've got a doubt column issue and the symptoms are starting to move, that's a sign of progress. It's not, people ask me this question sometimes. They say, well, is it a sign of progress in the emotions column? And I say, no, that's like a hallmark of the emotions column. It moves all over the place all the time. But if you have a chronic condition and it's starting to dance around, oh boy, you're onto it. Doubt is coming down.
Right.
And that's the gist of the doubt column and how you're going to use it. We'll go through some specific action steps. And what I'm going to do is I'll read through the list and I'll be like, I think this one applies to you and maybe this one doesn't, and I'll explain. But what we're going to do ultimately is we're going to pick out, let's say, 5 action steps for each column that are kind of your central ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then we might even condense them even more, because the less you have to remember, the better. Or if they can be codified in little files that you can click on, like, oh yeah, that's the trigger file. Then you don't need to worry about remembering word for word.
Right.
Ultimately, it's about integrating it for yourself. The only other thing I'll say about the doubt column, just as a reminder, is there's those 3 levels of doubt. There's, is this a mind-body thing or not? There's how far do mind-body things go? What can be cured versus not? And then there's, can I do this? Or is there something about me that can stop it? So that's it for the tenets of what to remember about doubt. When I'm walking around in a given day, I'm not thinking about the specifics. The specifics come later. We build the system so that one thing leads to another. The broad idea leads to that specific idea that I know about. Oh yes, I remember that now. It's like a way of reminding yourself from these broad tenets. Is that making sense so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you tell me if it wasn't? I want to make sure.
Yes, I would. I would. That's my power for today. Yes,
there you go. See? Exactly. I wanted to make sure you were being powerful. So in the power column, there are tenets for working with that too. One is just remembering your core narrative. If I had to tell you one thing to remember about the power column, it's just the core narrative. It's nothing else. Because it's all about your relationship with yourself, and that is a defining experience you have with yourself and the world. So it's like the emotional mantra. And essentially, you want to ask yourself at any point in time, am I feeling powerful or not? What would be the powerful choice here? We just went through it. You experienced it before this session. It was pretty cool. It was just like, I asked you, okay, listen, we could go this way or this way. Which is the powerful way? And you knew. Does that feel right to you?
No, I did. It's just I have so much trouble in that area. Just simple decision making. I mean, be at the grocery store and are we going to have chicken or steak or something like that? And then all of a sudden I'm this symptomatic, blob in the grocery store, powerless.
Okay, but what we could do is the same thing that you did here in the grocery store or anywhere else. You could say to yourself, when I describe myself to myself as having trouble making decisions, I've just reduced my power. So let me cut through that. And let me say to myself, I'm not going to reduce my power that way. I'm going to instead decide what's the powerful move here. And I bet you the powerful move is go ahead and make a decision. Either way, you can't go wrong. It's all good food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's the basic gist of action steps. Emotions for the onset and uptick. Look for those themes. Check out the timing. With doubt, do I have questions? Do I have confusion? Do I have fear? Do I have a lack of certainty? And how am I going to get that resolved? And with power, am I feeling powerful or not? And what's the powerful move here for me? And it can be different for everybody else. So now, Daniel, what I want to do is I want to go through some specific ideas, and I'm going to throw them out to you. And you're going to ask me questions about them if you have questions about them, or I want you to tell me if they resonate or they don't.
Okay.
Because some things could feel really important versus not. So one of the things that I talk about, we'll do a couple on emotions. One of them is black and white thinking. And what I mean by that is there are times where a goodist like you is going to always be thinking of the other side. And that's something I call shades of gray thinking. And that's something in therapy we usually very much recommend and move towards. But not for people like us. For people like us, we need to be able to dip into black and white thinking and think, that person being mean to me was wrong. That's just wrong. End of story. And that's partly because we have so much doubt, us goodists, that we have to be able to have a different part of our brain where we're thinking about things very clearly with peace and clarity. Does that feel like an action step that, I'm not saying you'll be able to take it all the time, but does it feel like an action step that you might want to take at certain points that could be useful?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think I had I'm full of examples today, but I had an example today. I was walking out of the gas station, and I had left the keys in my car and the radio blaring, and there was a nice, nice maybe a general term for this, but anyway, but she was telling somebody out there that this guy must be crazy for leaving his car keys, in this car. And I walked right out right in the middle of her saying this. And then she saw that I was walking to that, into my car. And then it's like I caught her right in the middle of kind of saying something about me. But, I kind of just responded to her. I said, well, if somebody wanted my car that bad in the middle of the day at a gas station where there's hundreds of people, then they could have it for all I care, And so it was kind of one of those moments where, kind of took over that moment and didn't let, I think in normal circumstances, I probably would have just not said anything or just tucked my head and just felt bad. Hey, someone was thinking I'm crazy for, leaving my car keys in my car going.
Right. And so if you used black and white thinking, then, and I think you did use it some there, but I think you can use it even more strongly. You could think of yourself as, I'm a good person. I don't need to worry about this. I don't need to worry about it at all. Or if the person had been really, really rude and nasty, you could be like, that person's just a jerk. I don't need to think about this at all. And dismiss it in a way that normally us shades of gray thinkers might not. So that's one that could be one that applies to you.
Right.
Another is that, sometimes we have to just trust our bodies because even if we can't feel the emotion, the body's expressing it. So you could think about, all right, well, when I'm having a symptom, I don't want to think about, oh my God, I can't access what I'm feeling. You want to think about it as, no, I am feeling it. I don't need to access it. It's right here. Maybe you're feeling it in your arm, but you are feeling it. So shifting it in that way can be helpful. Here's another action step. Thinking emotionally. Whenever I have a pain that's new, I don't think what's wrong with me physically. I don't think physically at all. I don't envision what's happening in my body. I think what is bothering me emotionally. Just thinking emotionally. These are all action steps. You can write them out any way that you want, but they're all options for how to think. Here's another one. Moment-to-moment thinking. Some of this we've already talked about.
Right.
But in moment-to-moment thinking, you're recognizing that your physical experience is always changing. So if you get a pain, big deal. It's a pain of the moment. You don't have to worry that it's going to last because you can just think, what's bothering me right now? I got an email this morning from a woman who said, I woke up this morning with terrible pain. I remembered you talking about moment-to-moment thinking, and I thought, what's bothering me right now? And the pain went away. And it doesn't always work like that, but that's the kind of thing that can happen for you. So I'm gonna keep scrolling through and see. Aha, here's a good one for you, Daniel. Now I've skipped over some. I'm looking and I'm seeing what's a Daniel one here. So here's one. If your reality has been questioned at all, which yours definitely has, you need to establish some level of unequivocal trust in your perceptions. When I say some level, I mean some areas, actually, because unequivocal means full level. Because otherwise, you're kind of knocked back into a kind of trauma experience of, oh no, I don't know if I can trust myself. So I'm not saying this is necessarily easy to do, but one action step would be find the way to trust your perceptions. Stop questioning your perceptions.
Is that where like constant negative thinking plays in? Is that
Yes.
would that be because that's kind of
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that I see myself is it just takes like a some like one trigger, whether it be emotional or something else that sends me down this path of you know spiral of feeling bad about myself or trusting in myself and that type in that type of thinking, and then it's almost like I can't, once it starts it's a delusion, I can't stop it, and then it's, oh man, I'm a mess, and so that's kind of what I think what you may be describing there.
Yes. And the way back in is to recognize, oh, I'm not trusting myself again. I'm thinking this other person had something better to say about it, or they have a better idea about it, or I just don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not suggesting we should walk around feeling so sure of ourselves about everything all the time, but at the very least, we can call into question, why am I doubting myself so much? Why am I attacking myself so much? Just give yourself that space, and that can break up the emotional experience. So let's say you're having a pain and you link it to one of those themes, and then you're thinking about that theme and you're thinking, well, I'm pretty messed up. I do this wrong all the time. Then you might say to yourself, wait, what am I doing? No, I'm repeating that emotional trauma on myself. I'm not going to do that. Often when we hit on that just right, then that pain goes away. So it's about it. Ultimately, it's really about thinking emotionally. I'm looking for more. Oh, there's one called "It Isn't Your Fault." That sounds like it's going to be good for Daniel. Let me read to you what I wrote here. I'm using the word trauma. That can be like capital T trauma, big things that anybody would experience that way, or lowercase t trauma, meaning tends to be downplayed by the person and by society, but still is quite traumatic. So I say trauma is never the fault of the sufferer, nor is it about some deficit in how you are. So we need you to recognize, actually, here's I say this, you became who you are because of the trauma. You did not get traumatized because of who you are. And that's an important way of thinking about it, because when you were talking to me the first time we met, it felt to me like you were saying, I'm traumatized because of me. I'm just this way, And so you were turning it on yourself. A big part of the emotions column is to reverse that, to start to recognize, no, I can actually be in my own corner about this. And I don't have to attack myself for it. So let me read the rest of that. Honor who you are inside. You know what happened to you. Don't excuse anyone else for it. Now, I'm not saying let's try to dwell on things or blame other people. But within yourself, you get to carry that narrative. That's what I want you to do. I want you to recognize that these emotional themes you carry around that cause symptoms, they're real. You're not making them up. It's not you being oversensitive. It's not you being a baby, anything like that. It's all completely legit. When it comes down to it, you've just got to trust your body. It's telling you. When I get a pain, I'm like, I don't know what I'm upset about, but I know I'm upset about something. So trusting your body is a big part of it. One thing that connects to Sarno is to let yourself rage internally. That's important. You might have gotten in the car after that and thought, what's wrong with that woman? Why is she sticking her nose in things, like spreading around bad feeling? Like I'm just a Just a guy going about my business. Like, leave me alone. I've had enough trouble in my life. And you let yourself really rage. And you can rage at a huge level inside yourself. It's important sometimes to let yourself get savage. Like, you could imagine, like, physically throwing that person or something like that. Now, obviously, you're not going to do that.
Right.
But it's important to let yourself feel that you can just be mad. So these are some examples of action steps of thinking that really target, well, let me say it this way. They work with those themes. You find that broad file, and click it open, and then you look at the specifics, and then you choose an action step that will help you with it. And you're going to come to rely on a couple of these action steps. Another one that I think about is I say your body is a flowing emotion. What I mean by that is anything you feel at almost any moment comes from your mental state. Could be emotions, could be doubt, but it just flows through you. So whatever's happening is moment to moment, and you're not stuck with it. And that helps me not think physically at all. I basically don't think physically at all. I can be on a basketball court and I'm playing and I'm not worried about what's going to happen to me physically. I'm just thinking about how I'm feeling emotionally. Am I feeling good on that team? Am I feeling powerful? Am I driving to the basket well? I'm not thinking physically.
I guess the question I do have is how do you get away from that? I know you're supposed to be seeing yourself emotionally, but how in some ways is that not different from being too attentional to those issues? Or I guess that may be difference of the physical sensations versus the emotions. I don't know if that question is.
I follow you, I think. Basically, the way I think about it is that the physicality of things is emotion. I don't think of it as separate. So I don't end up focused on the symptoms.
Okay.
I'm more with the symptoms in their emotional aspect.
Right.
I might still have the pain, but I'm not thinking about nerves firing or what's wrong in my body. I'm thinking about, God, that person pissed me off. Oh.
Even if that's your family, right?
Especially if it's your family. My God. Anybody who has a family knows this.
Well, I think that's one of the things is like I really, just the way that I was reared and raised, it was so wrong to express anger or anything like that in any shape or form. And so I just never knew how to do it. And then when I did do it, it seemed to be, just lashing out at others and not channeling it in the right way.
Yep. It makes sense. And we'll get back to all of this as we continue to communicate about this. But with your family, you have to let yourself rage. When you have little kids, especially, I tell parents this all the time. It's so guilt-inducing to hate those little kids, even though you also love them. But it's torture. You can't do anything you want the way you want it. Your whole life has changed. Some of it's for the better in huge ways. And others are just hell on earth. And it's okay to let that in. We're not going to tell our kids that until they have kids. Then we'll tell them about it and help them out with that. Right. So let's get to a couple of action steps about doubt.
Okay.
One that I think will be helpful for you is to remember that the antidote to fear is information. So whenever you're worried about something or you're having a doubt, I want you to remember, no, what I need to do is find the information. What information am I missing, or what information did I forget? What file do I need to check in? Is it the trigger file? Is it the other people trying to cause doubt with their aggression? Is it the, I'm remembering the old symptom and what if it comes back? None of that is real. The things that are real are science and logic. And if you keep relying on that and you use information as the antidote to fear, you can get past it. Another way of thinking about it is fear can't actually do anything to you that's lasting. It can make for a very bad, moment or even a bad couple of days. But once you get past the fear, that will get better. And that comes in different forms. Some people need a lot of reassurance from me. They don't need much. but they might send me a text and be like, this symptom is a mind-body one, right? And I'm like, yep. And then they're fine. Some people just need that. But thinking in moment-to-moment ways also helps you with doubt, because you'll see the symptoms actually start to change. When you're not thinking in a mind-body way, the symptoms often stay stuck. When the symptoms start to shift around, that helps with doubt, because that doesn't make sense structurally.
Right. I think that is one thing I have seen for sure is I still have like discomfort and pain kind of in the same areas that I've had all along. But there seems to be, some movement, in different times where I think, yeah, this is, I think I'm catching on to this, slowly, but it's definitely moving and headed in the right direction.
Doubt is starting to break up, and that's what you need. You need to think of it as a process. You're going to break up doubt more and more and more. Sometimes you'll check in with me for help. Sometimes you'll keep working on it yourself. But every step you make forward breaks doubt. Every time you get a symptom to go away, it helps. The first time a symptom returns, like a chronic symptom, it's one of the scariest moments, because you're like, oh no, the new system doesn't work. If you fight through that doubt, which is what I would recommend, and you challenge that doubt, and the symptom starts to go down again, you'll gain confidence at a whole new level. You beat it a second time, and you know it wasn't a fluke.
All right.
Okay, let's look at some others that I think would be key for you. Pairing an emotion with a symptom change, that's going to be helpful for doubt. But you need to push back as hard as you can at every moment against all doubt with information. You need to debunk myths. You need to contradict incorrect information. You need to recognize illogical thinking in yourself and others. You also need to do things like don't think the experts know what they're talking about if they don't know about a mind-body perspective. If they don't know about a mind-body perspective, you might as well be talking to a 4-year-old.
Right.
They don't know these things. I mean, they know other things. I'm not trying to say that dismissively, but another way to combat doubt, and I can't get you to just believe this, but you can at least have it as a mantra to potentially use, is that mind-body issues always, always, always make sense. They are never random. They are never not understandable. There are going to be times where we don't figure it out. But it's not because they weren't understandable. It's because we didn't figure it out. So that's an important one to remember, because you go through the columns and you've got a system to figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, you come to me. I've worked with people before who come to me after a consultation. They say, I can't figure it out. And then I'm like, sounds like you're starting to doubt again. They're like, oh God, I was. And they forget. That's why we have these columns, is to come back to them more and more. Some people need to combat doubt by knowing what's happening in the body. What specifically? Sarno talked about oxygen deprivation. Other people talk about neural pathways. For me, the explanation that fits the most is the brain sends out these things called peptides, which can direct a cell to do anything. And that makes more sense because it covers the entire body. But you need your story. You need to figure out, what do you think about it? What I think doesn't matter. It really doesn't. What I think matters for me, and what I think I can lend to you. But ultimately, you've got to be the one to figure out how this might work for you. Another thing to remember is this is all benign and reversible. You're not stuck with any of it, ever. And that calms down the whole nervous system, just to remember that. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you. You don't need to remember all this. First of all, it's all written down in the document that you can look at and kind of study and get a sense of which ones work for you. But what I'm more doing is just showing you the kinds of things you can do. The self-talk you can do in that emotional realm, and the self-talk you can do in the doubt column. Another thing is to remind yourself that there's all this evidence of mind-body experience. When I move my arm, that's a mind-body experience. People don't think of it that way, but it is. I don't know why I did that. I just, think about it. Why do your hands express what you're saying? Because your body's in it with you, So you can remember that. You can remember that crying is a mind-body experience, that blushing is, that erections are, generally speaking. that goosebumps are. There's so many things, and even tension headaches. People say, "Oh yeah, tension headaches," but your back can't hurt. What kind of logic is that? That's weird. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Well, no, I was just saying I don't think before I started this journey as far as understanding the mind body issues before, I just was so stuck on there's something, physically wrong with me that I just couldn't get out of that way of thinking. But now as I came across this type of thinking, it's almost I see it so readily in myself now that I'm also seeing it readily in other people. So,
Yep.
I've seen it in my children. My wife is stressed out. I can kind of see what's all going on with her. It's been very, it's like, but I don't feel like I can tell them about it because I don't know if I'm qualified to tell about it yet. But here's what I could say. Well, here's my thoughts about it, but.
You're getting on your way to being quite qualified about it, but I would encourage you take your time. You'll be able to help them better once you got it organized in your mind. When I was getting better, I wouldn't talk to other people about it much. I needed to get it set because there's all these different theories that get thrown out there, like, oh, we weren't meant to sit, or we got to strengthen our core. If you think about any of these theories, now that you know the mind-body theory, they're actually hilarious. They make no sense whatsoever. It's like we think cavemen didn't sit. What were they doing all that time? They had even less to do than we do. I guarantee you they were sitting.
Absolutely.
There's just some really funny ideas. Here's another one that can help. And I hope you're hearing that these are all just ways of thinking that all come together to show it's actually ridiculous that we don't know this. Here's another one. In history, we did know this. It's in the history and the writing of all cultures going all the way back through time until 1950s Western medicine. I don't believe that everyone was wrong until 1950s Western medicine. That does not make sense.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't work. So another one that I rely on is a bad theory is not one I need to follow. If it's not 100%, why am I following it? So my goal with this is to make it something that is, followable. So there's science, there's all these studies, there's recognizing yourself in the material and saying, yeah, I can see this. Whatever it is, you go through all the different material about it, and whatever brings your doubt down, you use. Now, if it makes your doubt go up, you've got a question, and then you want to ask it.
Okay.
And we need to get an answer to your satisfaction. Is that making sense?
Absolutely. I guess one question I have is, sorry, my voice is cracking up, but in some ways, do we condition ourselves like with sitting and those kind of things that they hurt? It's just like repetitive. Your brain just automatically tells you it's going to hurt to sit, and then over time, it's just you've learned that behavior, and then.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
and your job is to challenge it. Sometimes I tell people, if we're in session, and they're like, well, I don't know how to challenge it. And I'm like, well, let's do it right now. I want you to stand up, but I want you to think about what you're mad about. And then they just pop right up. And I'm like, how's that possible that we just did that?
All right.
Now, it doesn't always work that way, but that's a kind of thing that you can do.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to give you a little bit of a flavor of some of the action steps that you can choose with power. But actually, the funny thing is, you're not going to need this much from me. You're already getting these ones.
Okay.
I could see it. I could see it in our session last week. I could see it right before today. I've even seen it in this session today. Like, you're asking more questions on your own behalf. When we first met, you were a little more tentative to ask me questions because you were being so respectful, which I appreciate. But now you're every bit as respectful, but you're like right here. I could feel it. And I know it feels good to you.
Yeah, I just don't. I didn't know how to be present. I had lost that ability, even in general conversation, just to be focused like on you and what you have to say, because my mind was always, hey, my body's doing something, or I'm being distracted. And this is a conversation with my wife and children at home. It's just my body's just so overwhelmed, whatever that it was in that moment, that it's like I think that's why my wife says I need my hearing checked and I need my I need my eyes checked. But it's because I think it's because I just am so, overwhelmed with my body that I just couldn't focus at all.
So let me encourage you something. Here's an action step that you could take. Be kinder to yourself about it. You're overwhelmed for a reason. You're not making it up. Don't judge yourself for that. And even if somebody else judges you for it, even if it's your wife, who I'm sure means well a lot of the time, and it sounds like you have a great relationship overall. But regardless, cut yourself some slack. You are allowed to feel overwhelmed. You lived a life, and this is where power comes in, where you dip back to that core narrative. You lived a life where you felt you were made to feel like a disappointment. And then here you are coming in, trying to be a dad, living up to all those expectations when you were told you were a disappointment and you weren't valued enough. Sit with that hurt a little bit. And then decide, who am I going to be in this? And then maybe you can be exactly who you want to be. Your own man, your own dad. Not your own dad like you're your own dad, but the dad you want to be.
Yeah, I think it's that man, the victim mode that I feel like I was in. That's that thinking is poor pitiful me. I'm here and I'm not going to be any better than this, and that's is what it is. But that I think there's been a shift in that big time for me to see that I can be in my corner and have the power to change things.
That's great. That's amazing. And being fiercely in your own corner, we've talked about that.
Yes.
That's another power column action step. Accepting your trauma more fully. I didn't do that. I mean, for so long, I didn't want people to see me as having had trauma. I didn't want to see myself as having had trauma. I was like, I didn't have trauma. I'm fine. And mostly I was. But mostly I wasn't at the same time.
Right.
It's
I mean,
really
I didn't think I always look back and said, well, I had everything good. I didn't have anything like extremely bad, but there was emotional trauma or that did, at that age kind of change my way of thinking and change my path in some ways. And so, I'm beginning to believe that more and more, and that's helped, a lot. And I still have some more work to do in that area to.
Yeah, and we're gonna work on that together as needed. I don't think you're gonna need much work with me directly, but I'm here, and we can do this. As I've said, I'm not going anywhere. The goal is to get you better from this. The consultations are to get you the information you need.
Right.
And you've got that. Let me just say one other thing, because you mentioned that you sometimes have trouble getting your attention off the symptoms.
Yes.
So that's something that I call attentional. I used to call it attentional TMS, which is the term that's starting to use, but attentional mind-body syndrome, whatever we call it, mind-body symptoms. The way to get your attention off the symptoms is to go be powerful. Go live your life powerfully, and you will forget about the symptoms. When I say that, I hear myself and I think I'm making it sound like it's so easy. I'm not saying it's easy. There's something that I often say. It's not easy, but it is simple. Meaning there's just really one or two or maybe three ideas that you need to follow in this. And if you can keep doing that, you'll keep expanding your power, and you'll find that that's a different obsession, in a good one, that you can just go ahead and feel good about it. Like you might say, I'm going to go ahead and, I was just, with my girls, we started reading Harry Potter finally, which I really wanted to read to them because I love it. And they love it. And I'm just like, this is fun. I'm getting to do this thing where I'm being the powerful dad I want to be, the kind of dad I want to be. And when you're not being the kind of dad you want to be, maybe it's because you're not getting what you need. So take a step back, go somewhere else, look at yourself and think, what do I need here? Oh, I need a break, or I need a nap, or I need to I need to not have it go that way, or I need to tell my kids how I feel. That's something that parents often don't do. Trust your kids. Go ahead and tell them what you feel. The dad they need is you.
Yeah, I think
Exactly as you
sometimes
are.
sorry, sometimes I think of it as a constant trigger instead of an opportunity in some
Mm-hmm.
ways with
Mm-hmm.
them. There's always going to be, you know, my boys are teenagers, so they always come to zing me with something comment, just
Right, of
just
course.
joking, to try, hey dad, not say hey dad, you're a loser, but say, jokingly open the window and say, hey loser, and they're just trying to be, teenage boys. But here I am, hey, okay, should that hurt me, or should I just go back at him with something just like that, just to be powerful back at him
So let me ask you this. What would be powerful for you?
in that situation?
Mm-hmm.
Probably to tell him what I was thinking, like, oh man, just to you think I'm a loser, no, something in that regards.
Uh-huh. Well, see, I don't know. I have a hunch, but and we'll wrap up on this for today. But
Okay.
my hunch is that you're going to derive a lot of power from telling people who you really are. And that's going to include your teenage sons. So let them ridicule you if they want. They're going to learn something really powerful about having a dad who can actually tell them what what you really feel. Take a look at what's happened in these times together. I mean, I don't know if you've been following the comments, but people are just eating you up. They're like, wow, this guy is amazing.
Wow.
And what have you done to earn that? You were yourself. You put yourself out there. That's the most powerful thing you can do. If you're going to be fiercely in your own corner, you don't need to get the right comeback. You need to say who you really are. And you need to inhabit who you really are. So I just want to say again, I'm really, really honored that you entrusted me with you. Who you are, what you've been suffering, what you're worried about, the vulnerability of doing these sessions with me. And to me, it's just a sign that you weren't seeing yourself as even remotely as valuable as you actually are. This is just the beginning. This is the beginning of you living a life where you value yourself.
I believe that. I totally believe that. Totally believe that.
Well, and if you start to slip down a path and you're not sure where to go, you contact me because I'm not letting you go back there.
There's no way we're going back. There's absolutely no way. It's once you see the progress, I know for me, there's no way you go back to what it was before. It's not an option.
And you're going to grow more and more powerful. Some really amazing things are going to come from this, and I look forward to following that story. And you let me know if you need anything. I am here.
I will.
This is not the end of even the consultation. We'll see where this goes.
Okay.
But I'm really glad we got you the information. Thanks again, Daniel. It's been an honor.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to allow me to be on your podcast and working with me. It's been very helpful.
It's my pleasure, and we'll keep in touch, and maybe we'll have you back on to see, an update of things, or maybe we'll need to do a tune-up session and you want to come on again. That's fine.
I can be a first for any type of video. I'm an open book.
Well, I appreciate it, Daniel, and I really admire you. I want you to remember that. I want you to feel the way I do about you, though. We're getting there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks again, Daniel. It's been great.
All right, thank you.
Well, it was such a pleasure having Daniel on Crushing Doubt, and I couldn't really have found someone better for this. He was so generous and so open and able to listen. He soaked up the information. He's utilizing it. And I did want to make one point, which is you're going to see as we do these other consultations, certain people gravitate towards certain parts of things or need certain parts of things. I was blown away by what happened when we started talking about power. And I think he was too. And you could see it in this session that as we talked about different action steps, sure, we're going to answer questions and doubts and get those down to zero. And he's got the emotional themes that he can rely on. But you could see that it was when we talked about the power column that he would really come alive, and that he was utilizing that so well. We even found it right before the session, which kind of blew me away that we could do that right in the moment. So this was an illustration of the kinds of things that people can get to understand the overall system, to start getting their mind-body map in order. But I underline the word start, because these consultations, while they do frequently lead to significant pain relief or complete pain relief even, if they don't worry about that at all, because this is just the beginning of the process. This is giving people what they need to know to begin to get better. And I was really pleased and honored to have Daniel on. And I always find that this is the one downside to the short-term consultations, which is I'm going to miss him. But I'm glad that I will be able to keep in touch with him and have made an impact on his life, and I look forward to seeing where that goes. And we will keep you posted on that. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and I'll get back to you personally.